Hey, thanks for making it to Veterans Info Tap. I'm glad you made it. We have some huge news in regarding benefits for veterans. There is an avalanche coming, and I am glad that this is happening. So let's jump into it here. We're going to share a little bit of this information. Remember that, it's a big bureaucratic wheel that needs to move, and I picture this gigantic, like, stone wheel and a bunch of veterans, like, climbing on it, trying to get it to slowly turn. We're getting it to turn. That's what's happening, and eventually it'll make a full circle, and we will be good to go. So, with that, hit the thumbs up, subscribe, share with a friend, all that good stuff. I really appreciate it. I am excited to share some momentum here with you today. If you have not subscribed, please do so. If you want to support the channel in other ways, consider being a member. Thank you so much to all you members. I do my best to get back to you in the comments. All right, so here's the news from the newsroom for the U.S. Senate Committee on Veterans Affairs. This just came out October 29th, and I'm sharing it with you here today, and that is of 2024. So following a big push by a few of the senators, a senator and a House member, actually, VA moves to cover K2 veterans sickened by uranium radiation, as they should. The backdrop here is that there was uranium all over K2, and the DoD actually had a report or multiple reports stating such, and levels were so high it was outrageous, but the DoD never really said, yes, it was contaminated, officially. So I think that was throwing a little bit of a twist in this process, because if the DoD is not recognizing it officially as a contaminated area with uranium specifically, how can the VA attach presumptive conditions to that area? So that's part of the issue there in Uzbekistan. So let's move on. VA answers lawmakers' calls to use the PACT Act to ensure veterans stationed at K2 base in Uzbekistan exposed to radiation receive the benefits they earned. Following sustained oversight efforts from the Senate Veterans Affairs Committee chairman and the House Veterans Affairs Committee ranking member and U.S. Senator Richard Blumenthal, the Department of Veterans Affairs announced it has begun an expedited, big word, expedited. The U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs announced it has begun an expedited process to expand the presumptive conditions associated with the service at K2 Air Base in Uzbekistan. Receive the benefits they have earned. To do this, VA plans to publish a Federal Register notice with the intent of establishing service-connected presumptive benefits for veterans who served at K2 in order to make it easier for K2 veterans suffering from a litany of cancers, immune disorders, and other health conditions to receive earned benefits. VA's move to expand toxic exposed benefits for K2 veterans follow the senators and House members' push on the VA Secretary last month, where they called on the Secretary directly to use authorities granted by the Department by the PACT Act to ensure K2 veterans exposed to radiation receive the benefits they earned. That was one of the biggest pieces. A lot of people don't realize it, but one of the biggest pieces of the PACT Act was actually allowing the VA to have broader left and right limits when it came to establishing presumptives, locations, and conditions and so forth. So it gives them that authority to do so, which is fantastic. Have a couple quotations here. It's always nice to read the quotations because sometimes we can kind of read between the lines to get a flavor, if you will, of what's going on. So here we go. Every veteran exposed to toxins during their military service deserves access to the benefits and health care they earned and were promised. We fought alongside veterans to pass the PACT Act and ensure that that was the case for generations of toxic exposed veterans. I am encouraged VA is now using this law to add new presumptive benefits for K2 veterans exposed to toxic substances. And I'll keep holding VA accountable to continue taking the necessary and immediate steps to do right by K2 veterans. Next quote, and then there's a little wrap up at the end, so stick here with me. All right, so the next quote, veterans who served at K2 Air Base in Uzbekistan are still not receiving the benefits they are entitled to. That is why we called on VA for a reevaluation of the contaminants veterans were exposed to during their time at K2. These veterans have waited decades for benefits that should have been granted a long time ago. I applaud VA's announcement today and hope it means that we will soon see that expedited presumptive list for contaminated exposure at K2 very soon. Next one, K2 veterans deserve comprehensive care and benefits without exception. This action from the Department of Veterans Affairs marks an important and commendable progress in doing right by them and ensuring they receive proper health care. I look forward to the continued action of the VA in honoring the service and sacrifice of all veterans, and especially those who served at K2 who suffer from exposure to toxins and poisons, by providing access to treatment and care they have rightfully earned. Following the lawmakers' call, the Secretary of Veterans Affairs, Dennis McDonough, directed VA to use an accelerated PACT Act presumptive process to recognize additional presumptions related to service at K2, so specifically uranium. The Secretary indicated it is his expectation that VA will complete it as quickly as possible. He also announced VA will begin the rulemaking process to make bladder cancer, urethra, and other type of, I can't even say the word, hard word, tract cancers, presumptive conditions for veterans who served at K2 and all veterans exposed to toxic burn pits. K2 was a military base in Uzbekistan where some of the first service members were deployed in the global war on terror, and was a former chemical weapons site contaminated with uranium. After hearing from K2 veterans suffering from radiation exposure illnesses and reporting confirming uranium was found at K2, Tester Blumenthal pushed VA leadership in October to use authorities from the PACT Act to expand coverage for veterans exposed to radiation at K2. The PACT Act provided VA resources and authorities it is now using to further expand the list of presumptive toxic exposures related to service-connected disabilities. The congressional members' efforts to ensure K2 veterans suffering from radiation exposure related conditions have received support from K2 veterans and stakeholders. There's several other quotations here that I will throw into the description if they fit, from various organizations, right? So from the DAV, from the VFW, and from Stronghold Freedom Foundation, a few good quotes in there from them. And then the last little piece here, in addition to creating a framework for establishing the future presumptives of service-connected related to toxic exposure, the PACT Act provides health care for post-9/11 veterans. Combat veterans expanded VA's list of health conditions presumed to be caused by toxic exposures, which opened the door to additional benefits for veterans and improved resources to support claims processing. So there's this thing's twofold, right? One is K2 specifically, K2 veterans getting hopefully a list for presumptives established very soon. The second piece is this absolutely shows you what the VA can do with regard to establishing presumptives. If you are a veteran who has been exposed by your time at K2 and you have a condition that you believe is related to your service, what I would do is I would do Google searches on anything that says, I mean, even this announcement here from the U.S. Senate, what is it? The U.S. Senate Committee on Veterans Affairs. Even this announcement where it acknowledges that there was uranium there, and the VA moving forward and creating a presumptive list is already bubbling up the benefit of the doubt, right? You still have to prove nexus, but now what you're doing is you're proving you were there. You're showing that they're establishing a presumptive list. You get a nexus letter from your doctor stating that based on the information that they have with regard to the contamination at K2, that it is more than likely that your condition is due to that. Do not wait to file a claim waiting for the VA to establish a presumptive list. Use all the bits and pieces that you have today in order to get that thing filed. At least that's my opinion. Work with an accredited rep, see what they say, and go from there. Thanks for watching. I appreciate you. Have a great one. And remember, if we don't take care of each other, something went wrong.